JP Timberlake, no relation to Justin Timberlake.
Distant.
Distant cousin?
Distant.
Distant cousin, okay. And he's gonna tell us a little bit about rod building. And so why don't you take over and just talk as long as you want. Well, if you talk too long, we'll leave.
That sounds good.
By squad meeting, we're doing it Thursday, last Thursday of this month. We're gonna be tying lefties deceivers. So anybody that wants to come, Blackbeard's in Beaufort, back room. You got a RSVP with Jonathan here. And like I said, we meet typically the fourth Wednesday of every month, but this month it'll be Thursday. We've had a good time. We've tied a lot of different flies. We'll be glad to not interrupt JT and talk about that sometime, but if you want to learn how to tie lefties deceiver, come this last Thursday of the month. Blackbeard's in Beaufort, the back room.
It's a great time, and we all learn. We all learn. It's a great time.
Hey JP, can I do one quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
On top of that, the Friday, the 20th of June, the CCA Crystal Coast Redfish Showdown Benefit Party is happening at the Convention Center. Who went last year? Joe and I did. I know. Just the two of us.
Well, we've gone,
Out of
it
this
was
group,
at
probably.
Totlines
Okay.
a couple years ago, it was at Totlines, a bunch of.
This is not to be missed. It is if you like bourbon, if you like fishing tackle, if you like good food.
Bottomless bourbon cup, y'all. They made a mistake. They might not make it again this year.
It is crazy. You got it. It is crazy, and it's for a good cause, raising money for a good cause. So the information on both our little sheet that I just passed out. We'd love to see you come out for both, or at least one of those two.
They have a
events.
fly division in their tournament, and anybody thinks they're good red fishing on the fly, enter that, because there's usually, it's only 3 or 4 or 5 fish get entered into that division.
Easy money, people. Easy money.
Do it on a kayak too, man.
Okay. Sorry, JP.
You're fine. A little bit about me, I'm JP Timberlake. I now live down east in Smyrna. Retired as a police officer in Winston-Salem and came down here full-time 3 years ago. I've been fly fishing saltwater is where I cut my teeth in Charleston. And then I kind of got into building rods, and especially when I had kids, I couldn't go as much, so then I really kind of got into the dynamics of that. Really enjoyed that. It gave me a chance to, I guess, live vicariously when I couldn't go all the time. And create a lot of friends, and had a booth at the international show for about 15 years. And it was really nice because I've got friends all over, know a lot of people in the industry, and it's been really cool. I mean, I could probably pick up the phone or the email and go to Italy or wherever and get up and go fishing with somebody, so it's kind of cool. About building a rod, there's nothing in its purest form, simplest form. You just take a blank. You're gonna sit there, take a reel seat and a handle, you're gonna glue it up, you're gonna put your guides on here, wrap it with thread, coat it with a different epoxy, and you go fishing. Okay, you can make it as simple or as complicated as you want. With a fly rod, there's not a whole lot that you're gonna do that hasn't been done or that's any different.
So it doesn't have a spline like other rods?
We're not gonna go into the spline. That's a debate that's been going on for 50 years. Some people will tell you this, some people will tell you that. I build on the straightest axis and I've never had an issue. But other people will argue differently.
Okay.
So what he's saying about it is a spline is people will say that a rod bends a certain way and all that, which if you think about how a blank is made, what they do, this is all wrapped carbon cloth and resin. It's wrapped over a mandrel, okay? It's wrapped this way. So if you think about it, there's probably not a spine that does this, is there? But anyway, that's for another story. What you do, and guides, a lot of people will sit there, and I like a single foot guide. You'll see most of my rods have single foot guides on them. A lot of people like snake guides. There's no, one is just as good as the other. It's like, you may like a certain style rod, It may not suit me. Everybody has a different casting style. It's what you get out of it. Some of these, this is a Dan Craft. They don't make them anymore. Dan Craft is no longer with us. I like a fairly, what you would call a fast or quick rod, but the older I get, you know, the way that I fish, I'm not as aggressive as I used to be with my casting. It hadn't helped me either way. But you can, as far as your guide spacing, so you can talk to any manufacturer, and for a 9-foot fly rod, okay, your butt guide, which is, this is your butt guide, the one closest to the handle. That you can look, I don't care if it's St. Croix, Pac Bay, MHX, CTS, that butt guide is gonna be anywhere from 77 to 79 inches roughly from the tip of the rod, okay? And you know that this top guide, your first guide, is gonna be somewhere between 4 to 4 3/8 of an inch from your tip, okay? They're all gonna progressively go where your butt guide, you're probably gonna go anywhere from 10, 11 inches, and then it progressively goes down. Your next guide maybe, if this one's 11, that one may be 10. The next one may be 8 or 9, and they go successively down. Now that may change if it's a multi-piece rod. Say you've got your guide spacing on this one is right there near the ferrule. But if you adjust it half an inch or an inch, you can adjust things and it's not gonna make any bit of difference. You don't need to sit there, if you use a chart and it says it's gotta be 75 3/8 of an inch. If you moved it half an inch because you had a ferrule there, it's not gonna make any difference. If you want, you can move everything a half an inch over or this way. It's not that critical. One of the things that I did is kind of like my thing building a rod is handles, okay? That was my thing. I sold a lot of handles to other custom rod builders. That was just my thing. So I did a lot of study with ergonomics. Most of your factory rods and your handles, they're all standard. They're small, okay? I have fairly large hands, okay? If you have small hands, my fly rods may not work for you. I have what you would consider an oversized grip on these because I make them all. But what that does is, especially older people or people with larger hands, the older we get, you get arthritic. So if you have a very narrow grip and you're sitting there doing this all day long, that fatigues your hand, and it doesn't get, if you're fatigued and it hurts, you're not comfortable. So it also affects your casting, okay? So that is one of the things that I studied as far as the ergonomics. And everybody has a different handle style, okay? Y'all know the standard, your full wells, your half wells, your cigars, all that. I like, you know, you've got a simple full wells grip here, okay? And
Did you design all these handles here, JP?
I turned everything, I built everything there. So, you know, you've got a half wells, all right? I like what's called a reverse half wells, or what they call a Fenwick grip. So you take that half wells, you turn it around. But one of the things that the Fenwick style does, and it's really pronounced on this one, is you'll sit there and I turn it down, but then I make a little lip there, okay? And all that, this is what is comfortable to me, okay? May not be comfortable, you might like a full wells or whatever. The thing with building a rod, if you go to any fly shop in this country or elsewhere, well, I want a trout rod, I want to buy a 4-way. Well, it's going to have this little bitty grip on it. Why can't you put a full wells on a 2-weight? Or make it bigger if it fits your hand? That's the beauty of building your own rod and doing your own things, okay? You can design it. Now, you're not gonna do a whole heck of a lot. There's not a lot that you can do that's gonna change the dynamics of your guide train or anything else that does anything with. There's just not out there. So, for decoration, you can put reel seats, handles, you can do some thread art or feather inlays. You know, I most of my stuff now is pretty, you know, I did this one years ago. I love this rod. It's a great 8-weight, but like some of my newer stuff that I'm fishing now, I'll just take it and I just build me a nice handle and just a simple colors, okay? You don't have to, I mean, you can sit there and buy a pre-done grip, reel seat, fighting butt, guide, and just sit there and go to town. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like something in my hand that's comfortable. I don't like what they had some stuff, if y'all been around, what's called a maniform grip. Or it was an odd shaped grip, and then there were some that came out with finger holes in it and stuff. What the problem that I found with that is your hand stayed in one spot, okay? So again, you've got a fatigue factor. So I know with me and most people that I've ever seen, when you're casting through a fishing day, this rod is rotating, your hand is relaxing and contracting. So that rod sometimes will rotate a little bit, your hands goes up and down. It doesn't, if you're stuck in that one spot because you got finger holes, then that hand is gonna get fatigued because you can't move your hand around, you can't relax it as you're casting, okay? That's just something. And I know I see a couple of y'all sitting there looking at some of these guide trains on here. Okay, instead of my butt guide going straight here, I've got a little short one here. That's called a line tamer guide. Okay, line tamer guide, when it first came out, was, it might have been 80, 100 years ago in England. They were looking to try to tame some very supple silk lines and stuff that were all over the place. Well, we found out that in a lot of cases, I'm sure y'all have seen Lefty Cray or Flip Pallet or whatever, when they make a long cast and they take that finger right here to line that guide. This is kind of like the concept guide system that Fuji came out with, where you tame your line down quickly and let it shoot on out on a spinning rod, okay? I can't say I've got rods with it and without, and I think it helps me, and it may be totally mental, okay? But if it's like fishing that lure, your favorite lure, you're gonna stick with that because it works for you, and you're confident in it, okay? I'm sure most of y'all are better casters than I am, but at least up here, if it helps me out, I'm gonna do it. It doesn't change anything in how the rod works.
You're trying to build two identical rods, the only difference being the line tamer on one, not the other, just to compare them? It'd be interesting to see.
No, I just fish.
Yeah.
I just build. So, like I said, handles are my thing. You can do all kinds of things with woods, cork and wood. I don't have any acrylic in here. It really is not a great, you know, you can do exotic woods and inlays and stuff. And the carbon fiber. Now, the carbon fiber is a game changer, I think, when it comes to a fly rod. This first came about, Andy Deere, I guess that was probably 2000, somewhere right in there. And he they were using this forever in the aircraft industry. Well, he started playing with it and called me up and we started messing around. So we were pouring our own foam, and then you take a carbon sleeve or fiberglass sleeve or something and you sleeve it, laminate it down, and you make a really nice rod. Now, what I like about it on a fly rod is it responds. You feel every nuance of that rod. You can take a rod, two identical blanks, build one with this and one with a different style grip, and they're gonna feel different because you feel everything as that rod is flexing and all that. Now some people don't like, says it's slick. Well, I haven't had an issue. This rod right here has caught hundreds and hundreds of stripers on the Roanoke River, and you know how your hands get, right? All right, I didn't have an issue. Okay, you know, now if they get a little too excited, you might want to wipe it down. You know how that, you know what I'm talking about if you've been up there. But you know, also you can be real creative. Good friend of mine, Bill Ballou, and he does some other handles and some plugs and stuff. So I sent him a glass handle and I said, paint it up what you want. So he painted it up. I've been saving this one because I haven't, just for a trout rod, but it's in rainbow colors. Now, if there's not a lot to think about, but we typically use two types of epoxy in building rods. You don't want to go get your DevCon 5 minute epoxy because it dries and it gets brittle, okay? So most of the epoxy that we use for our handles are real seeds. It's a paste type epoxy that remains flexible, whether it's Pro Paste from Mud Hole, whether it's Rod Bond from U40, Andy Deere, the next gen, he's got some real good stuff out that I've been using lately. And that, it remains flexible, okay? It's a paste epoxy, kind of like peanut butter, so you got some working time. And there's some 15, 20-minute stuff out there now that's pretty good, or the other stuff is usually about 24 hours. And you've got probably a 45-minute to an hour working time, so you got time to do things. Now, when you take your guides, you do your guide spacing, and whether you use little slices of tape, or I do like little slices of rubber tubing and slide them up here, and I get my guides where I want them positioned. All these are wrapped on with thread, okay? And they're wrapped on with thread, and then you put what's called a finish epoxy, whether it's a Flex Coat, Next Gen, there's several good companies on the market. All the epoxies work just fine. And then I'll put it in a turner as that's coated, so you can sit there and it's self-level, okay? So I know I'm kind of rushing through this, but I just wanted to kind of give you all an overview of how to build a rod. If you can tie a fly, you can easily build a rod. Go ahead, Joe.
So if you wanted to inspire somebody to try to build their own rod, and you were turning by hand, you didn't have an automatic turner.
Okay, well, you can use like a permagloss, which is a 1-part urethane that is done by U40. And what that does, it's super thin. But what it does, it'll sit there and be dry in an hour, okay? Or less. It's super thin, so you're not gonna have to roll it in your hands or whatever for more than, probably 20 minutes. And I know that seems like a lot, but if you're gonna use some of these other epoxies, I let mine turn for 6 to 8 hours before I put a second coat on, okay? But I have some automatic turners. Now, you don't need all kinds of equipment. My first couple rods that I ever built, I didn't have rod lays or any of this stuff. Literally, my thread was in a shot glass or a highball glass. I ran it through a telephone book for tension, and I held the rod right here and did it. There's, you know, you can use a spar urethane if you want from Home Depot. That's what they use forever, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just some of the epoxies that we have now are a little bit better. Does anybody else have any questions?
Is there a difference in technique between doing like a smaller rod, like a 7-foot, 4-weight versus a 9-foot 8-weight?
Not at all, okay? The basics of building a rod, whether it's a fly rod, casting rod, spinning rod, or trolling rod, or surf rod, the basics are the same, okay? Now, obviously, you've got different guide trains for each of those other type of rods, but for the most part, you can go online and say you go in and bought an MHX from Mudhole. Real nice stuff, okay? You can go on their website and it'll give you their guide spacing for a 9-foot fly rod, okay? And as long as you're pretty close to that, I mean, you don't have to be like down with your calipers and it's like an 1/8 inch this way or no, you don't. Okay, I know some builders that are like that. I mean, they know how many turns of thread they put on each guide. It drives me nuts. They're great guys, but they're engineers. Okay, enough said. But yeah, I'm hoping not Project Healing Waters, Take a Warrior Fishing, and Project Healing Waters have talked about doing a rod building class, and we're going to try to do it over the winter time. So I don't know if any of y'all are part of that group or whatever. I've talked to Dwayne Urey, who's Take a Warrior, and I can't remember the guy's name. He's from Project Healing Waters out of the Greenville guy. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But you can do anything you want and be as creative as you want. Okay, the thing with, I've been doing it so long doesn't make me phenomenal, as what it does is I've been exposed to so much stuff. Okay, I know as a rod builder, you come to me and say, hey, I really like this star rod that does this, but I want something similar. Well, I can sit there and based on the action of that rod, just with my experience, I can say, all right, well, we're looking for a 7.5 foot spin jig, and rated for this. That's where my experience comes in. Not that you can't build a better rod than I am. It's just that I've been exposed to a lot of different things, and I can sit there and, the key to it is finding the blank that works for you. I mean, you can go out and you can buy a Winston or a Sage blank. They're proud of them. Just like they're proud of the completed rods. But, some of the other stuff out there, everybody makes a good blank. There's some that I don't particularly care for, but that's because it's my style. My style is different than yours and different from yours, and whatever works your casting style. Any of y'all want to build a rod and want to try some different blanks like I've got, that's fine. Come on, call me, come on out. We'll throw some different things. You see kind of what you like, the action that you like, and then you can find something in your price point that'll be close to that.
Is the price point weight sensitive? The blank?
No, I mean, typically, you can sit there just because you're saying like, is an 8-weight more expensive than a 5-weight?
No, you're looking at 2 8-weight blanks, or the heavy, how much each one weighs, is that relative to?
No, and that's the thing, like a handle. I do some wood handles. Sometimes I feel like I like wood in my hands. It's just that soft feel. But all the weight's here in my hand, okay? It's not up to blank. When you're building a rod, when you have weight up here, that affects the action of the blank. Not when it's in your hand here, okay? These are identical blanks, all right? They'll throw the same. They'll feel different just based on the handles, but the action is actually identical, okay? This one just feels different because you feel everything in that, all right? Super light, got a titanium reel seat, carbon fiber handle. These are all little 6.5 foot, 4-piece 2-ways. Great, this blank has been great for these North Carolina streams. Fantastic. But people don't get into the weight of fly rods like you do bass rods. You know, trying to build that completed rod under 3 ounces or 2.5 ounces or whatever it is. You know, we're not worried about micro guides and all that stuff. Find a blank, a rod that you like, that suits your style. And don't count out glass. The glass guys have not been sitting on their hands for the last 30, 40 years. There are some phenomenal fiberglass blanks out there. Phenomenal. And they're just as powerful as this. You just gotta slow down a little bit. And they're phenomenal. If anybody has any questions, I'm just trying to give an overview on things.
Just asking, how much difference, if any, is there between like your 6.5 foot freshwater rod versus your 9 foot?
Well, the difference is that's a 2-weight, and most of these are 8s and above, with the exception of this one, which is a 6-weight.
Will the building process be the same though?
Yes, yeah, the process is the same regardless, okay? Now, you know, obviously my guides are gonna be a little bit smaller on this 2-weight as versus a saltwater rod. You know, you're typically gonna go with 16, 12, 10, and then, you know, 8s or 6s depending on what you're doing the rest of the way on single foots, okay? But the process of building this rod was the same as this, well, not that one. This one, or that one, or that one, or that one. This rod is a little different. I was talking to Joe about it before we had dinner. This was a couple of experiments that I did, okay? I wanted to take the American Tackle Aero reel seat, which is a phenomenal spinning seat. And I incorporated it, but I wanted to do carbon fiber and encapsulate the whole thing. So it was kind of a pain, but it was a good experiment. So all that's just one piece, okay, into this blank. Now this is not a fly blank either. This right here, it's a 1-piece 8-foot, all right? But you can put I put an 11-weight slime line on this, and it'll shoot it like nobody's business. And I'm sure some of y'all that are better casters than I am, you'd be like, and it's gone, that whole line. It's pretty amazing. But like I said, it's a different animal. It's gonna feel completely different in your hands than a traditional fly rod. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. I can't wait to put some albies on it and just, you know, have a blast. Or maybe even take it offshore and put some mahi on it or something. But you can do whatever you want, just like tying flies. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, that's not an unheard of technology, because a lot of the early trout rods, spinning rods, were fly rod blanks that they turned into spinning rods. Right?
Well, and you can make a fly blank, take a fly blank, I've done that, and make a spinning rod. They're a blast, okay? It's gonna be a lot more moderate than your typical spinning rod that you have, but they are so much fun to fish. And the translation there is, think of your number over 16, okay? So an 8-weight is gonna be rated to about 1/2 ounce, up to 1/2 ounce, 8 over 16. So a 4-weight, you could throw up to maybe 1/4 ounce, okay? That's a pretty rough translation, but it's usually pretty close. And then you've got a 9-foot rod that's a blast. I mean, think about going trout fishing and you want to throw some of these super light jigs in the wintertime, and you sit there and you make you a nice little, you know, 6-weight where you can throw, you know, 3/8 of an ounce or less, and you've got a 9-foot rod that you can just sit there and really reach out and touch them. And it's a blast. It's a blast. They are a lot of fun.
I don't understand how you pick the blank. If I'm looking for a fly rod, I go in the store and I can touch 5 or 6 of them, find one that feels just right, or to go outside and cast them.
Right.
When I start buying a blank, I don't have no idea what I'm doing.
Well, and that's I guess a lot of that is I would go to all those years of the shows and talk to the manufacturers and stuff, and I would go, even though I had a booth at the show, I would go and I'd play with stuff. I bought a few blanks that, I'm gonna try this. I didn't like it. I'd sell it, or they might probably still sit in my storage unit. I've got a bunch of those. But it's, if you know that, all right, say I really like that TFO such and such blank. Well, everybody's top of the line or upper echelon is gonna be pretty close. Now, one may be a little, maybe a little,
Sorry, guys.
No,
quick or
this is
whatever.
all night long, don't worry about
And
it.
usually,
You gotta dance before you walk.
Yeah, that's right.
Y'all take care.
Yeah, have a good night.
it's all in how they flex, okay? Some may be a little tippier, some may break here, or come all the way down into the below the rod. But, that is a hard thing to do, is to find out what works for you, okay? So a lot of times talk to a custom builder that has stuff on hand or has stuff already built that and that way you can sit there and try them, or go to the international show. We're blessed it's in North Carolina. Okay, it's in February every year now. It's now in Winston-Salem. It started out in Charlotte, moved to High Point, now it's in Winston-Salem, all because Tom Kirkman, who runs Rod Maker Magazine, is from High Point. Okay?
So the rod making show, fly rod. show.
It's the International Custom Rod Builders Exposition. It's not just fly rods, it's
Okay.
everything.
In Winston.
Yes, the Benton Convention Center. And so there'll be, this last year, I went up for the day and talked to Stephen and Gayleen from CTS. I said, I want the Affinity. He goes, I only got this one. I said, can I have it? He's like, yeah. So I bought the gray one, I was gonna get a different color, but that's what he had, I bought it. So there's, it's hard to tell you because I don't know what your casting style is. You're gonna have to just go and try it. And some of these other stuff, like that Batson Attorney. Batson does a lot of OEM stuff, and I don't know if you know that is, their blanks are being used by a lot of these big name companies that you're buying in the stores. You just don't realize it. Whether it's a spinning rod, a fly rod, or whatever. They're making the blanks for these big companies. There's not too many blank that make their own blanks. Some do, some don't, but not that many, except for your super big ones, But that is the hardest thing to do, is to find something that works for you. And if you're not sure, then talk to somebody. There's builders all over the country, all over the Carolinas. Talk to them, find out what works for you. So that's pretty much it. Unless anybody has any questions, y'all are welcome to come up and take a look at some of this stuff, handle it, whatever. Check out these rods. I just brought some stuff to show y'all. Yes, sir.
Are most of the blanks that you find, are they imported, or are they US made, or?
There's
are
not
the
too
kind of
much.
kind
Most of your stuff is imported.
Of TFO, their stuff is what, Korea?
South Korea.
Probably Korea. CTS is, New Zealand. But I'm trying to think, there's a couple out there, Striker, and they're just now on the market. I didn't care for any of the stuff it was okay. I saw it at the show and it was decent, but I wasn't blown away by it. They're built USA. There's a few companies that are made in the USA, not that many.
Loomis's new company, Edge, is that what it's called?
Yeah, that Gary,
Yeah.
he's got Edge. You know, all your big companies are pretty much up in Squeen, Washington State. You know, whether it's Lamiglass or and all those guys, that's pretty much kind of the hub of where the most of it is.
Questions for JP?
Thank you.
JP, if you want these Captain Rod McFly endorsed, we can work out a deal.
Who's paying whom?
Anything else from the club tonight?